interest announcement. It's brought to me on a couple of occasions, as well as myself. If there's a potential conflict of interest, how do we handle that? What's the proper protocols? What I'd like to do is have our general counsel, David Arrow, just give us an overview so the whole council hears it at once, and then we can announce any potential conflicts of interest at that time. So David?
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. Fantastic. Let me adjust this. Okay, is this working better?
Yes. Yes, David.
Okay. I appreciate you letting me attend virtually. It's been a crazy day. The short item that I was asked to address was just to give a brief rundown on conflict of interest. As you're all very aware, this is somewhat of a unique situation. We have a council that's made up of partially elected officials from various other local governments, plus some appointed officials to round out the entire council. So it's sort of a blending of a couple of different standards, because there are standards for elected officials, and then trying to get the best recommendation for this council, I had to address those with sort of your general quasi-judicial sort of bodies as well. So the first is to address, there's two potential types. It's hard to say that they're conflicts of interest. One is an actual conflict of interest where the individual has a personal relationship, a pecuniary interest, or another connection that would cause bias in making the decision. The other is an appearance of impropriety. And the distinction is that an individual may not have an actual conflict, but due to some circumstance, an objective observer would perceive that individual to be unduly influenced or biased. And the way that those work is that initially, if there is some piece of information or fact where you, as one of the voting members of the council, and I should be very clear, this pertains to the voting members of the council because you are the ones that will be making the decision, that if you have some connection or experience that you feel places a shadow over your thoughts of the grantee, and it would cause you to be more or less likely to approve their request, regardless of the information that they present, or regardless of the discussion that's held with the council members, then it would be appropriate for you to simply advise the council that you have a conflict and you'll not be able to participate in the discussion and decision of that application. If this is the option that you select, the most efficient way is to sort of announce that up front so that their application can be moved towards the back. That way you can participate in everything leading up to it. And then when it comes time for that application, you can simply excuse yourself and then the rest of the council can address it. The second issue is if you can't quite decide, if you feel that that's a conflict, but you do have information that you feel could be considered as that, then you should let the council know ahead of time and explain the situation. Now, the council as a body in this particular situation has the authority to decide that there is an actual conflict for a member, and then the council as a majority can vote to say that you have a conflict and would not participate. And it would work the same as the other way around. I don't know. That's the short version of that. I don't know if you have specific questions about the processes or about the conflict of interest. I'm happy to answer them.
Council members, anybody have questions? And I'm making sure Mayor Pro Tem Mason can hear us and Councilmember Black are both here, can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you, Chair. No conflicts here.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any more questions for David? All right, Dave. Thank you, Dave. So
thank you.
Are there any conflict of interest announcements by anybody? I am going to bring up the second part where David, to bring it to the council, because I serve as one of the board members for the Northern Colorado Health Alliance. So we meet quarterly and provide guidance for them. There's several members on that board from Weld and Larimer County. I've been on the board for a little over a year. I'm not involved in their programming work or how they spend the funding, but some oversight in providing guidance and some direction. So I'd like to hear from the council if they perceive that as a conflict of interest. If so, I will excuse myself when any conversation is around the alliance.
I think, maybe just. We've been doing it this other way where you had kind of maybe just handing the meeting over to me to run during that time. And maybe just not commenting or participating at that. I just think that would kind of help. I did actually, when I was down at the Colorado County Commissioners conference, some of the other commissioners and stuff, we were all talking about this. We've all been sort of on rural at councils, and there's some new commissioners and some others are, I think, have been asking questions like this, and I was just listening to what they were doing. I just thought, just to make sure we don't have any kind of perception. I think it would just maybe be helpful in just showing that action, maybe just shows that we're trying to have a clear thing, but I don't know how, it's uncomfortable to say that, I just think that would help kind of make it feel, I don't know if you feel, how you feel about that.
No, I appreciate it.
I do think, looking a little bit, because the work being on the grant reviewer for PHS services, I do think that typically if you are on the board of directors for an applicant, that you probably ought to recruit yourself on the funding decisions toward that organization is just my experience. So I think that would be a good thing.
I can, I'm part of that. I dispute that. I agree. That's a good kind of check there. I agree. Thank you for that, Pat. Councilmember Black, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to concur with that. Typically, in my experience, if you're on the board, optics alone. And so, I mean, that's something we could ask our lived experience folks who are with us and or folks that work with our agencies. What do the optics looks like? How does that look to you if you were to see that?
Yeah, Shane.
I would agree. Optics are important, right? And not giving any hints, any impropriety or favoritism is always the correct way of doing this sort of.
Appreciate that. Any other, I appreciate the conversation because then it's kind of grounded there as well. Yes, me.
We've done a lot of great work and it was brought up and we, like I said, we talked a lot of this, all 65 counties were and done in the last few days. And a lot of them are still trying to get caught up and figure out, and we get a lot of, I wouldn't say scrutiny, everyone's looking to a lot of counties for getting things done. And I think anything we can do just to kind of remove any kind of hint or thought, because we have a lot of folks in the community and there's all this overlap and we're also getting national interest. I just think that it just shows that we're understanding that. And I know other counties, they're still trying to, they don't have many resources. So there's a lot of intersection and overlap. And I think we moved very quickly and this one is a non-entity entity, but it has bylaws and it has jurisdiction. And I think we're learning as we go. And I think, I don't think we've done I'm not starting to say we've done anything wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong. I just think it'd be going forward. It's great for us just to, maybe just to be aware of that and tighten it up and go forward. And I think we have lots to celebrate and also lots to just make sure we have inspire all that confidence and keep that confidence. Because this is a settlement money that's supposed to be doing things for the community. And I want to show our focus that way.
Jessica.
We have a policy that I'm happy to share with Liv or Carol or anybody if you want to use that as some sort of template moving forward.
That's a great idea. Would you wouldn't mind that share that? Okay. Well, what I've heard is, so at that time, when any discussions around the alliance, I will turn it over to Vice Chair, and I will abstain. So disclose. Any other disclosures for the group? David, yes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my recommendation, I apologize. I totally understand the desire to have the vice chair take over and you sit there quietly and not participate. My recommendation is that when it does come up, if you would exit, and that's because I am very guilty of body language having a much greater influence over how I communicate, even unintentionally. So it just a cleaner optic that way.
Thank you. Thank you, David. All right, that's what we'll do. Any further conversation around item 3? Seeing none, moving to approval of October 24th, 2024 meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Seeing, hearing none. Anybody opposed to the motion? That passes unanimously. Moving to item 5, financial report. Carol and John,
Financial report is information only.
okay. Any questions on the financial report?
Hi, Mr. Chair, and John and I attended the regional learning opioid learning forum yesterday. And there were some points brought up, and I just want to make sure we're kind of aware of that. I'm sure you discussed, John was glad he was there, but it sounds like we have to go back and maybe adjust our 2022 to 2024 plan to make sure if the grantees, I think we had $793, but if the grantees, if what we awarded, if that does not match exactly what they spent, then those plans, we have to go back and adjust that and resubmit the 2022 to 2024 plan. And I just, and then also discuss how we're gonna roll forward or just call out that we're rolling forward the administrative costs. But as I understood it, John and all them, because there was just lots of things happening. I had just come back from a conference in Denver. So I just wanted to kind of bring let the whole voting board know about that and just know that's something that we have to do. And there were some other deadlines, and we have to do that very soon as well, as I remember.
Yeah, and actually I have a meeting set up with Jack in the AG's office already in January to get all of that done.
Right.
But yeah, we need to amend our 2024 plan in beginning of January, and then in February, we need to report on our 2024 plan and then amend our 2025 plan for any unspent 2024 funds. It's a little convoluted, but we can do it.
And also, just Mr. Chair, I did bring up again, because they've been very busy with the holidays, but I did bring up again capital policy. And they are reviewing that, and they'll get back to you as soon as they can with the conference and everything else and capacities and new staff members. But I did bring that publicly again yesterday, so.
And I and Liv were also attending that, so we've been. All 5 of us were there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
No, we heard it all, Zoom like that.
Oh, I didn't, I sometimes try to find everyone, but I didn't see you, because usually I haven't seen you there, but yeah, yesterday was a lot of information.
It was, absolutely. Thank you. Any further questions for the financial report? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank Carol, especially John too, but Carol for all of the where you've kept us in line and done everything really wonderfully and are now following up with this, and just really appreciate all your hard work and dedication. As I understand you're retiring, and I just wanted to publicly say that I very much appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I'll be probably at the next meeting or two, and then that'll be it for me.
I agree.
We're very grateful.
Very. Okay, moving right along. The big item, number 6, year 3 funding deliberation. So you'll see, I've handed out those online, it's in your packet, this nice big handout that Liv printed for us. This is the work from Dr. Jared Olson and then with Jessica and Amy and those folks all attended, gave us percentages. We just made it bigger, and what they did is change the format to show all of the presentations we've had over the last 2 meetings and what the request was and whether that bucket area funding percentage meets it, or if there's leftover, or if it exceeds it. So red, of course, exceeds, green means there's still some money left over. The big one is under E dot, whatever, that is address the needs of pregnant or parenting women and their families. We have received unfortunately no requests on that, so you'll see $140,000 and change sitting there with no. So that's the one. Everything else has some requesting organizations in that. So how would the council like to proceed moving forward with prioritizing the funding and approving that? Yes, Beth.
And just double check, I believe that these are from left to right in order of priority identified, or is that not correct? So we had listed high, medium, low at one point, and just trying to remember what those were.
Good question. Jared, or
So you can see the percent of the total funding in year 3. So those would be the closest levels that were associated with it. So yes, you are correct, left to right. But the funding is another.
Thank you.
thank you, Jared.
With that, I think I would like to suggest, and I don't know exactly where, but I would suggest trying to make whole the requests for B2. That 168,000 that we're short there, either by moving some of the amounts we have more than enough for to cover that. And then in addition to that, I think a question about E dot question mark on whether or not we take those funds to maybe fill some of the others and maybe do some work this next year and trying to identify the need and gap and what exists in our community right now, and if there are any organizations that are working in that area that we could try to partner with to then the following year provide some funding toward that.
So Beth got on the table. 168,000 B2, figure out how do we make that whole because that was high priority. And then E question mark, maybe looking at moving that money this year and working over the next year on identifying organizations or partners that could maybe fill that for the next round.
So I think that's a great idea, and I think, because I agree, we haven't had any requests, but I think it's still something I know it's a priority for trustee Youngland, and I want to make sure that we honor that, and I think others were struggling with that too, except for the Burlington Denver metro areas that had services, but I was trying to do the math in my head, but if you move the 140 over, still short. But then that's still another 140. But I think that if you move the 140 over and then take 20, I think we might have enough to cover all the reds with the green, or some of the greens, at least.
I do believe I did that math, and you can, it equals out. You can use the long to substitute into the short.
Was that intentional, Dr. Olson?
This is.
I'm gonna give you a chair, Jared.
It's just how the request came down, but you can see there's a total balance of year 3 funds minus the current requests. So if you took all of the requests from all of the prior and current grantees and allocated in that $2.8 million bucket, there is still a balance of about 100.
With the that's great, thank you. With the caveat under H9, under the sorry, it's not H9, which one is it?
D16.
Pardon?
D16 that.
D16, yes, thank you, is the Larimer County co-responder. There was a request at last meeting to come back with what would your budget to be to fulfill the 70,000 that's in there. And they did. So there's that piece too. So if you were to put the 70 back and go to 280 to the sheriff's office, that would reduce that 150 by 70,000, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I didn't catch that request. So that would be a balance of about 8,000.
Wasn't there something similar with CSU, the school prevention as well? Wasn't there there's something here? Yeah.
So their initial request exceeded what was allocated to that bucket, and then they requested 225. So you can see in that bucket, if you wanted to fully fund it at the level that the CSU Prevention Center had requested, you need that.
Thank you, Beth. That's exactly right. All right, now the mud just got real muddier. So how do we want to proceed with this?
I think maybe make it clear, maybe do a couple steps. I would make a motion to take the E funds, category E. Obviously, it isn't important, but we need to maybe look at investigating and digging into that more for the years to come and move that over to B2.
Is that a motion? Because I'll second
Yes.
that.
There's a motion and second. We'll make sure we capture that. What did you get, Liv, on that?
Move to use the funding in category E question mark to fund B2.
And that's $140,000,
Yes.
13 cents. Is that what I see?
Yes.
Okay. Any conversation regarding that?
Well, which I don't feel it will, I just want to make sure we're really keeping that on top of our awareness and figure out, I mean, I know the need is out there, we just have to figure out, where and how we can make that work.
So, I agree with you, and I think by just keeping these buckets and not eliminating the buckets still there, showing it that it's something we're concerned about, but we just haven't had the money, so I think that, it's by keeping those buckets, we're showing that that's still something that's a priority, and I feel like that's an action, we can just keep those and then still be having those discussions, so.
Correct.
I don't know how you feel about that right
No,
now.
that's perfect.
All right, thanks.
So I'm hearing the motion, but keeping these buckets ongoing. Yes, so that's still there in the place marker. Any question, conversation online? So I'm not missing anybody.
No, I just wanted to say that I do support that this time around, but I certainly want to keep that column. I've come to know of an agency out of Fort Collins that would fit directly in that, but they're small and they're not always aware of what's going on as far as funding resources. And so that certainly is a need. And so I just want to make sure that column stays that way because I envision applicants at some point.
Yeah, I agree. Keep that golf that's right. Any conversation from our advisory members on this? All right, we'll go.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure that, and I know we are tracking gender and, people who might be severely marginalized in our county, because next year is going to be even harder for them, the way things are looking. So people in treatment and recovery are going to be very vulnerable. So if we remove that category, let's be sure that we're looking at programs that support all the people in recovery.
Sure.
That's just my, including women and anyone who's in recovery.
Thank you for that.
Can I add something to that comment? Because that speaks to something that is hitting home in some other areas of my life. But if you notice on agencies that have been grantees, Harvest Farm, Abundance Foundation, Lighthouse, they all are tied to the Christian faith, unless, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain segments of our community that do not feel comfortable or safe in those spaces. And so her comment speaks to a group of folks that are still having a very hard time finding safe spaces to recover and receive treatment.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Erin.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I hear you, Chris, and I think that's a really good point, and thank you for bringing it up. And I'm looking back at Dr. Olson, when we look at some of these, this data and we start, I think we're close to bringing forward some of that, metrics and some of those things. And I think we can look at, zip codes, demographics, identities. I'm just wondering how we can kind of look to make sure that, when she said that, something popped in my head and I went, oh, and I won't say it out loud, but I'm thinking that would be nice to, because we had that blip last year about, folks of the Latin that had a Latin demographics who had a very high level of addiction. So we haven't really had those conversations, so are the data we're collecting should be able to help us kind of pull out, so we make sure some of these, I'm gonna call them subgroups. All, folks in Larimer County, we're addressing, anybody who has maybe a higher impact or marginalized, lack of resources.
So I'll say maybe by using the example that we saw with Hispanic and Latino individuals, that was across 2 counties. So we were able to look both at Wells overdoses as well as Larimer County. Wells has a much larger Hispanic population, so that those estimates are a little more stable. And we did see an increase in both counties for the Hispanic population that we didn't necessarily see in the non-Hispanic white population. So that was concerning. If you look at some of the Healthy Kids Colorado data, there's also some indications that Hispanic youth may be exposed to or using prescription opioids without a prescription at a higher rate than other groups. Again, these are very small numbers, so you're just looking kind of for hints, but that's one to consider, especially because we know there are systemic barriers to care and access, including language, culture, transportation, things like that. So that's one we can definitely continue to evaluate and monitor. The same goes for some of the rural populations or demographics, because we can see where injuries are occurring for overdoses through work with our coroner. And we can assess, at least zip code, which doesn't always give us rural or urban, but zip code through our emergency department data. However, with some of the other populations and communities you're talking about who may be historically marginalized or have lack access, LGBTQIA, those with different religious beliefs and things. Even veteran status is not always clear in the data or consistently collected. And so with those populations and their access, I think I would probably defer to folks who are doing more of the on-the-ground research, including peer support, maybe going and asking NOCO cares for some sort of assessment of what they're seeing.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Councilmember Black, you have your hand up for a second. Just want to make sure.
Oh, I just wanted to concur. I was just on the State Behavioral Health Advisory Council that I serve on this morning, and that was most of their data is coming in with Spanish-speaking Hispanic immigrants. And yes, our LGBTQ plus, they're also the first targeted with our online sex trafficking. They're the demographic that's targeted first, and they're also very high suicidal rates. And so we really do need to start focusing on safe spaces and access to that demographic. Thank you.
One thing I can add, go ahead, Shane. At the health department, we have a health equity coordinator, and we work on our delivery service being in an equitable manner, making sure the language is being very inclusive, that culturally inclusive. We can certainly run these contracts and grants with whomever and make sure that their proposals are culturally language inclusive on their work. So that's something we can do rather easily because we built that structure. So that's something. I want to make sure Shane.
We do have multiple grantees that are doing very strong work for the marginalized communities in Larimer County. Northern Colorado Health Network, Northern Colorado Health Alliance, the very grassroots side, the RO Club.
Yeah.
So I think we have a wealth of experience that we can tap into to identify needs. And I'm looking right at G.0. Guess we're a little older there. I don't know. My thought was, how do we perhaps ask these grantees what else they could use to help the marginalized communities? And perhaps if we do find ourselves with some surplus funds after things are decided, if they can reapply to make use of surplus funds.
Thank you for that, Shane.
Thank you.
So, as Dr. Olson shared, the numbers are small there, but we could make a huge difference with targeted response.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think we haven't really talked about or looked at that. Before we do that, though, we've had some interesting articles out as well. with, you know, misuse of funds and state money, or tax money in Denver, and then the AG's office had the other report came out. And so I think, you know, we want to be out to target those groups. We'd love to make sure we're using trusted sources who also have, as Carol always reminded, they have to have all the 501c3s and all those things that she keeps us making sure that they have all the background. I'm just very sensitive that that was a hot topic the last few days as well. So, but I do think there's small numbers, we could really make a huge lift there. Very, it wouldn't take, I think that targeted response could, it would not be a lot of, in my, I mean, it's small, big impact with a little, with the right amount of money. So yes, I don't want to say small. It's not small, but I'm just saying it could be a huge, huge impact.
We do have a motion on the table, wonderful conversation. I do want to make sure on E, it is 140,131. That column was narrow, so I figured that out. That within moving that over was in put B2 in the red at 28,278. So any further conversation on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signal by aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That passes. Look at that. Good work, Liv. It's on the fly, making change. Okay, Beth.
I'd like to make a motion, but first explain. I want to bring the rest of the three reds up to even. So if we are able to do that, my understanding, unless I misunderstood, is through the 50 that's left, we can cover the rest of those. Can I make a motion that we do that?
Well, I'm trying to add up the numbers for the 46, if we move the 100,000. Because I think we said we only had ones that had put in extra, but if we move, so we have 28, if there's the 47 and it's 28, that the 100,000, we covered those, right? Should, yeah.
So which have, okay,
Close to.
yeah, it's under
From the
100,000.
So under
So that-
J3,
But it looks like they requested the totals. Am I missing something with it? Oh, okay, no, that was the allocation. Never mind, got it.
My understanding is if all of these were made whole, there would still be 158.50 left over.
Okay, correct. So that's why I thought maybe we'd target that 100,000 first on this left,
Okay.
to zero those out, and there still would be some green there.
Okay.
Would that be?
Yeah.
Would you want to amend your motion to?
Yes, that's what how I like my motion to be. Get that, Liv? Sure, keep that. Utilizing the column, which is for J3, the excess there to make, B2, G.0 and G.9 whole, coming from that J3 column. Second.
we have a motion and second. Conversation.
I honestly would like to sit tight on the monies and really get focused on these priority areas and even contemplate a conversation on vetting these grantees to ensure that they're accepting and inclusive of all peoples in our community.
Okay, so does that mean are you in favor of the motion or not?
I'm not, I won't be in favor of that.
Okay,
Can I make a clarification on
Sure.
that? Just making sure, so we would still have the 150 in excess, even if we make this change, that we could sit on and decide whether it's inviting others to come back and how we want the rest of that funding to be spent. This would just take the excess in the one column to make the other three whole. Are you understanding that?
yes, Commissioner.
I hear your concerns, Counselor Black, but I also want to kind of remind everyone, we're not having a meeting until end of January. And we have to submit this report, but in February, right, we have to get, so we really don't know if we have time to vet all of the, and I'm not even sure what that process would look like. And we would have to have a discussion about that and how that looks like, and then we haven't, when all these other folks have already applied to, and that could be something that we can add to the Butler questions or talk, but I think that's a whole nother meeting and discussion. And I'm not sure we have time.
And I agree for later distributions, ongoing distributions. So my apologies for not making that clear, Vice Chair.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. I was just kind of panicked, like, oh, are we gonna get that whole text? So, and do it well, so.
Good conversation. Any further conversation? Seeing none, please signal if you're support of the motion by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, is there any way you could just do that? Okay, further conversations, let's bunch of numbers here on the fly for us.
We're gonna have an opportunity to ask questions per group
Yeah,
that will, okay.
here's, yeah,
I'll hold those,
absolutely.
tell that.
That's the January meeting. That's gonna be a big meeting too. But yes, they will get their proposals at that time. And that's when you vote on it. Yes, Shane.
Would it be valuable to create an ad hoc committee that could meet before the January meeting to start to flush out what Counselor Black has suggested?
Good question.
I would like to not complicate the Butler work that we're doing with the data collection and that discussion and those metrics. We haven't even brought that to you all yet, and that is, I think we're ready to do that the next meeting. There it is. And I feel like that meeting might be appropriate to bring that up, but I think since we've already had the Butler Institute, University of Denver, we're bringing those metrics and having that that already done with these subject matter experts. I hate to have another committee that's having a discussion about metrics or things when we already have this other data committee that's been working on that with the subject matter experts and talking to the grantees. But I think that's an important question that we could bring to that conversation when those metrics and that system is being presented to you all. But I think to add another set of metrics happening when we're trying to get these ones done with the money that's being spent to do that might cloud or confuse or make things a little tougher. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess to clarify, I think my suggestion was not so much around metrics, but around what qualifications, questions we would want to be asking of individual grantees to ensure that there was broad accessibility for all parts of our community. So more subjective base that could then be coupled with the metrics to figure out.
Yeah, they're.
And that is part of those metrics is asking some of those questions, how do you serve people and where, so that is kind of part of that, it's not just numbers, so if we could kind of just put that on the back burner, I think that isn't that, I hear you all, I think it's an important question, but I think since they've worked so hard and we're so close to bringing that forward, that might be something to, but Dr. Olson looks like he maybe like to add to that, is that okay?
So we did have a couple proposed in the last prior meeting. We proposed a couple questions around equity and how it's a pretty generic question. So it would allow somebody to, for their particular organization, say, this is how we integrate considerations of equity, put it in there. It's not the final question. It may change between then and now. We will meet again on December 16th. I'll defer to David about whether other individuals can attend that meeting and to the chair. But that is on the agenda. I do want to be careful about the timing of that because I'm not sure, you're right, if that happens December 16th, is the intention that that question would go out to grantees who are in line for contracts and receive an answer before those contracts go out, or how does the council see that?
And to answer the question, if you have more than 2 council members, they would share that we need to post the meeting. That's the only thing.
Including non-voting council members?
No, just voting.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
I just would like to ask Shane and Aaron, knowing that we have had those conversations about equity and those conversations, does that help? Because this is gonna be, kind of, as you heard, we're meeting and we'll be bringing us forward. Does that help to understand? We've been having some of those conversations about looking at that piece. Does that,
Yes, it does for me.
okay,
I won't speak for Council Black, but.
cool, thank you. Just want to make sure. we
It does,
haven't had
it does for me. I just noticed that within the Human Services Grant program that City of Loveland has, that had not been done necessarily. And so these are things that I'm looking into with all of my advisory councils that have to do with grant making. So thanks for indulging me on that and being prepared for a conversation in the future. Thanks so much for the time. on
I appreciate you, Councilmember Black, making this a priority that we need to be looking at equity. And when we're saying equity, how can we redistribute resources in a manner that works for everyone? And then, you know, so that's a big piece of this. We want to make sure that is part of this whole process. Because if we're leaving people out, we're failing. So I'm glad you bring that up. I'm glad we're having the conversation. It's so important when we talk about health equity. Okay, so yeah, well, we got it. So the green now, there's 10,328.
Yes.
Okay. What does that move do for the total fund balance? Is it? And then we do have it, the proposal in the packet under co-responder D1.6 that sheriff's offices gave us a budget. He put in there 210,000 up to 280,261. So they are all requesting the additional $70,261. So I put that on the table as a point of conversation.
For both of them?
No, it's just under the co-responder D1.6. So you'll see that it says there's a surplus of 70,000. They're requesting that be part of their contract for to make it 280,261.
A second.
Oh, I'll
Oh,
make,
you were, I thought you were.
No, I
sorry.
put it on.
you want to make the motion and then I'll second.
Sure. Yeah, you say, I'll make the motion that we add the additional $70,261 to column D1.6 for the co-responder.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second regarding column D1.6 for the request of the Larimer County Sheriff's Office and the co-responder program going from 210,000 to 280,261. Further conversation regarding that motion.
I don't believe this is, there's a lot of information package. My concern is I don't think it's so much the co-responding units that's having the barrier. It is the jail. They weren't able to the group wasn't able to continue that or even start that project within the jail because they couldn't get the staffing to set it. And I didn't know if Larimer County could, if the sheriff department could, use some of these funds to try to help that initiative get going. That was troubling to me, but I think abundance. Yeah, I think it was abundance. I was looking for it, but I didn't know if they could help facilitate get this going.
So I think there are some other programs that are happening, and I think those are two separate things and two different projects, but I wanted there is a really exciting new program that's getting started that was just received a very large grant from the Larimer County Behavioral Health Services, and I'm hoping Jessica won't mind shit about that. It's $150,000 and it is helping with that, and also the Parent Cafe. So some of that work, and there is stuff happening in the jail, and Stone Soup got a large grant from the Colorado Attorney General's office. And so there is other things happening in the jail. And so it's not like nothing's happening, but they have this brand new program that is gonna be probably one of the seconds in the country. Am I right, Jessica? Because Kansas City's been doing a phenomenal job. And they're actually also looking at predictive model. We just got a big presentation on it 2 weeks ago. And it's got, they're starting working on modeling to predict overdoses and suicides and the area to be able to kind of work on that. And that, I'm just glad in mind, because I think that is also some work that could be done. And it's multiple partners and multiple agents.
Well, I understand that wasn't, you know, this is the crisis team or the home responder team, but I just, you know, with more money towards the sheriff's department, it was just really troubling that the funded foundation wasn't able to get that going. Because I really think that help within the jail system of, you know, having these guys be able to, gals be able to make their meetings and we talked about how important that was at the very beginning, a couple years ago, and I don't know how that's being addressed.
So if I might say, this is being addressed with this new program.
Okay.
And it's gonna be huge. I mean, it's gonna be a game changer. And it's exactly what that is. And I don't know if that would be okay just to share, because this is gonna help a lot with that. And I think it will help with getting people to their appointments, not missing, if I understand that, missing things. And so.
So a couple things. I guess I'm not as familiar with what you're suggesting, but the gentleman from Abundance Foundation is here to speak about that. And the co-responder program through this model and what's being funded is completely separate. It's about co-response. And the grant that's through behavioral services is like a multi-agency collaboration for sharing data. And I don't know how much detail I can go into because I'm not as knowledgeable on all the intricacies of that project that's just getting started. I guess like I don't know if we can pull something from the back of the room, but.
Well, I will,
Yeah, it's
I'll call it,
relevant
but
to-
it's called Familiar Faces, and it's got this tie-in for kind of that transition thing and helping folks coordinate with that coordination of care, the jail and release, and with care afterwards and housing and court dates and all of that stuff, and having them all communicate and share data. And it's kind of what I think what you're talking, what you're thinking about. That this is 150,000 towards that, and it's in we're getting help. We're getting a lot of help from this program that's being nationally recognized, and it's going to be, I think, a game changer for Lorimer County. So,
Well, I only brought, and I know what, you know, we're kind of getting off track. I just wanted, before we give them more money, I just, that was a concern of mine, that if they're needing more funding to get this going over here, I would defer that money to go to that, but.
I think it's important, and I appreciate that, just kind of some foundation laying. The reason it was 210 was because that initial dollar amount that we were told, and then David came back and said there were some more settlements that were, and so the overall dollar amount for year 3 went up. So they're not coming back necessarily for more money. They were restricted at that 210,000. We got more additional money.
That's right.
There was some conversation last meeting, come back with the proposal with that. I do have a couple hands up, Councilmember Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, since they didn't request that additional funding, but they'll have that in their budget. I have spoke to a couple of co-responders through the sheriff's office that have utilized Longview, and sometimes there's some issues when they try to get the first contact is an administrative staff person, which is a pretty low level position. And I'm not sure if they're peers or if that's something that could be discussed, but I would like to ask Sergeant Cook if they're getting all the support they need, or if they need additional helps, that 70 grand could actually be pinpointed for, that would help them when they show up and sometimes administrative staff isn't sure what to do with a really wild individual that's in crisis.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I want to make sure, Mayor Pro Tem Mason had his hand up. I went down. I just want to make sure that wasn't technical.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity here. Yeah, I certainly support the sheriff's office endeavor in this. In fact, I think it was me last time that had requested that they do go ahead and bump up to the full 280 per the increase that we had since the last settlement distribution. Of all the programs that are here, and do not get me wrong, each and every one of these programs is very important. But when it comes to Wellington, our co-response units are really the where we see the most impact in as far as the community goes. And certainly I actually had the chance to run into an individual actually just this last week where we ended up having to have the sheriff come out and talk with this gentleman. These programs are very impactful to Wellington, so I certainly support the sheriff's office endeavor in moving this up to 280. The co-response units are just absolutely amazing. So I would support the increase.
Thank you, Mayor Pro. We do have Sergeant Cook here. There was a request. Are you able to answer that request? I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Black, for your question. I think that with any new program that we've had in any government entity, there's always going to be some glitches that have to be worked out, some issues that come up, things that weren't thought of, and specifically relating to Longview Treatment Center. We did have some of those issues and some of those speed bumps that we had to kind of traverse and navigate. But what has been happening the last month and a half has been high-level meetings between the Longview staff and the sheriff's office, and they have worked through a lot of those issues. So we are back to a policy and an SOP for our agency, and we're also working with Fort Collins co-responder team and Baldwin PD's co-responder team to bring everyone that we contact to Longview. And that includes people that are combative, people that may be intoxicated under the influence of drugs or alcohol, people that don't necessarily want to get treatment, but their mental health dictates that they're a danger to themselves or others, or gravely disabled, which is the criteria under state law in Colorado to take somebody in for a mental health hold. But we, over the last month, have noticed an extreme improvement in our relationship with the Longview staff. They've added some additional staff members that are able to work with people that are physically combative, people that are verbally combative, and they have some new tools that they're using. So our experience of the last month and a half, since we've had these meetings and talked about specific incidents that have come up, have been greatly improved. And I can tell you, even yesterday, we had a very uncooperative person who was on the verge of fighting with officers, and our co-responder unit was able to respond. That person was severely intoxicated on alcohol, and we were able to bring them here. The staff at Longview responded, met with us, immediately took control of the situation, and we were able to get that person into medical withdrawal here at Longview without any issues at all. So I can tell you that things have improved greatly since, and I don't know how recently, Councilmember Black, you've talked to people on our team, but that has been kind of something we've been working towards, getting better at what we do and working together and working collaboratively. So I can just report from my experience that has greatly improved over the last couple of months. So
Real brief.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for all your work and your team. And you guys are real heroes, and I'm hearing good things. So just as long as you know that you have our support too, thank you so much.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
While we have you here, can you tell us what the additional 70,000? You saw the budget.
Yes.
What does that do?
So basically, the original purpose of our grant request through RAC was to help us expand our unit. So we were able to add 3 positions, deputy positions to our unit, including a assistant supervisor, which is Corporal Fay, and then 2 deputies there, Deputy Kevin Kingston and Deputy Eric Schultz. And in addition to that, on the side of Larimer County Behavioral Health Services, we were able to get additional funding to help staff an additional clinician, mental health clinician that works with our team, and a clinician supervisor. So what this additional 70,000 will do will obviously, it is not completely funding the cost of having those 3 positions, which we originally got from the ROAC Council, but what it does is it helps fund that at a higher rate. So it went from 56% to about 65%.
Okay.
Funding for those 3 positions.
A question, Commissioner.
Thank you, Sergeant Cook, appreciate it. I just want to be cautious as a council. Like, I understand Commissioner Black's concerns, and I think those are great concerns to bring up maybe to Summit Stone, but I'm not sure if some of these things, we're talking about the grant thing, what's on the grant things, and maybe if there's issues with services and how they're being done, we should go to, I don't know if that's the ROAC's job, and maybe we should have those conversations with Summit Stone or with others and not maybe here, because then it looks like, you know, just like we had this with the Behavioral Health Policy Council when there was a question about you know, or nonprofit and how they were running and that they were having issues with that, but that was a separate issue from what was within purview of the Policy Council, and I just want to caution us from maybe getting outside of our scope. I'm just trying to be cautious because there's you know, what is the role of this council, and I'm not, and what are we, you know, being other things. So I just want to caution us with that.
Wonderful, good point. We have a motion on the table. And a second, any further conversation regarding the motions? All right, let's call the motion of that question over. All those in favor signal by aye.
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 Anybody opposed the motion? That passes unanimously. Okay. So with that, then what do we have total in the, is it $10,000? Because you have to subtract the 70 from the 80,
So we still have an excess of 80,000 right now.
even with doing the co-responder part.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So I would like to make a motion then for the G9 for the CSU prevention. I still go back to that research showing how all those youth, the research showed such substantial significant results. And that is such a huge prevention measure. I would like to address G9 and meet with the requested organization of CSU prevention of the adding, taking care of the 14,804 and making whole the 225.
I believe that was done.
Oh, that was done. Oh, never mind. Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
No,
I
that's good news.
did
Yep.
the good news. Sorry, I hadn't made that note on here. I'll make that note now. Okay.
My understanding, everybody is on green or whatever with 80,000.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
B2 needs to be
Yeah.
also
B2
grayed out. Yellow. No. We were gonna
You
take
took out the
that,
100.
we were gonna take that.
Yes, I thought that was done. That's not done.
Need an additional 28,000.
Yeah, we still need additional.
Oh, what?
My motion included that.
Yeah.
For the 100,000, from the 100,000.
Is this
From the 100,000?
This one?
Yeah,
Okay, I think if we. It's kind of.
yeah, that was my understanding.
That was my understanding too, because if you took the 100,000. You subtract it should have covered all 3 of those reds, right?
Correct. That's some extra.
So minus 28. Sorry, we were doing this on the fly.
Yes.
But it's great work.
That would leave about 100,000.
Out of that 100, it makes $9,675, right? Okay, while we're checking that, those have all been greened out. And the co-responders greened out,
Or increased.
Increased to make it, yeah.
And can I just say real quick, anybody who can work on a spreadsheet and change those numbers and that. So I have most respect, you know.
while everybody's watching too.
That's the
We're-
I am not, I am not proficient in that skill set, so I just want to thank you all.
This is great. Okay, other thoughts, comments? We're
So I guess I have a thought. Now, our administrative cost has, it was that before Carol had it up, we had we had a carryover of 700 and something. Was that in the administrative costs
no.
column?
Is it that much? It's like 470,000, right?
Yeah, and that doesn't include all of our expenses.
Not
We haven't
this
had
year.
all expenses.
We do it twice a year, is that right?
Right. We don't have the expenses for the second half of the year.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering, I mean, we know we're gonna have administrative costs. I guess we can wait to see what that balance is gonna be, but do we have to know where that amount is going to sit? To turn this to the state, or can it just be extra moving forward?
Oh, rolling the administrative costs, we just have to say that's what we're going to do, but
Right.
I
But
hate
this
to
one,
hold.
we're
The
gonna have
remaining
extra
80, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah, every dollar has to have a home.
Oh, yeah,
okay, so we are gonna have still, when she gets through with the spreadsheet, we will have an amount that has not been delegated.
Yeah, we
Right.
think it's about 80,000.
You're correct,
Okay, but we have to have a home.
Yes.
correct.
Okay. So I'm wondering, we should probably put some in that administrative column. There is 0 there. I mean, obviously that we need some funds in there.
Yes.
my understanding is we already have quite a bit in administrative. And I think it's already pulled out of the equation before we get those numbers.
No,
No.
no, we didn't put it in
No.
any amount for
Oh,
administrative
we
this
didn't?
year.
Oh, yeah.
What we want to do is roll it from prior year
Yes.
excess,
That's right.
Okay.
and we'll amend 25 to cover that, I think.
Yes.
And
That
that's
is the plan.
roughly after second quarter or second half of the year, done around 400,000.
We currently have 464,000 in admin. That does not include any of the second half of the year expenses. The first half of the year expenses were around 50,000. So we're looking at maybe 400,000 to roll forward.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah, we don't need
It
extra.
can-
No, I thought I saw a figure of 700, what was that up on that sheet? $783 or something that was gonna roll over.
It's just remaining.
Remaining from the last go.
Yes.
So I say it's every meeting, but I'm gonna say it again. Oh, because again, I would just gotta be all of these commissions and talking with other opioid abatement councils and the Stedman group and some of the other groups that they hire to run their places and how much their administrative costs are. I still think staff's not charging what they're doing. We have that Larimer County is supplying for this council. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7.
Laura.
7 staff members, one of them at a 2 at a direct level, very pricey for my budget, that they're doing above and beyond. So we just wanted, and the lawyer at 8. So looking at that 50,000, I'm just saying, because I feel like, I just want to say when I hear all the others, we walk in and these amazing folks get it all done and present it. So I just want to be careful that we, in case we ever need that, in case we have to cut back with our budget cuts from the state and everything else going on right now. That I want to be careful that we have some there for contingency in case we have to backfill with some kind of position to run this, because in case we have to make some adjustments. Who, I mean, I don't know too many councils that have epidemiologists working so hard for them, to be honest with you. I think we're one of the only in the state. So I'm not trying, I'm putting on my commissioner hat right now. I just want to say, things look good, but I just want to be careful about that because, if you think about that, if I still think, and I know they put their hours in, but I know these folks are dedicated and care about this work. And I know, so I just say that as someone to please think about, there's 8 people from the county supporting this work. I just want to say that.
Yes, Ben.
I appreciate that, and it's not forgotten.
Yeah.
And all of us around this table care about this work. So I'll just leave it at that, but I would say, the remaining dollars, if there's a bucket that is more geared toward the equity work that we're trying to do, maybe we put it in there, if it has to have a home, and I'm sorry, I can't say which one that is. But maybe to be held for future direction of work, that's a great idea.
And if I might say, Mr. Chair, I don't need to say you guys all don't care, but I just, when we were sharing notes and I was understanding and hearing because some of them, there's 3 or 4 councils that all hired a STEM member at a pretty penny, and then they do everything, and I just feel like we're very fortunate that you all, first of all the council members come, we're active, we have a great group, and we have all the support, and I just very protective of what we have, because we're very fortunate, because other ones are still struggling. I just want to make sure we kind of don't take that for granted. Thanks.
Yes. Same.
I love what you brought up. I think in the work that we're doing, if we want to look at equity and health equity, the bucket, put it in stage 9, put it towards more harm reduction. I don't know if there's a more powerful way to continue to make amends to those affected by this crisis in our community than by keeping people alive, right?
So Shane,
Something with SUV.
so you're suggesting the remaining dollars, put it into bucket H9?
H9.
Okay. Any further conversation on that?
But I think what she was suggesting, we were talking about the Hispanic targeting of the equity work that way as well. Is that what you were talking about? What we use?
Well, whichever we end up using it for, but that,
If we have to pick a bucket,
yeah, maybe that.
that would be at least.
Sure. I appreciate that feedback. That's what we need. Yes.
And I was gonna ask Chris, and that's what I wanted to hear from lived experience people. What's your thoughts on where to put it? And thank you, Shane, for that. Do you have any comments on that, Chris?
Well, I tend to agree with him with Shane, because we just see the senseless death of dots aren't connected, communication isn't reached. People aren't being met where they're at, so I would agree with him.
I could add real quickly too, you know, we have the RO Collective doing such strong work in underserved communities. They do some harm reduction work. Maybe we invite them back to bolster their funds specifically towards harm reduction. Right, potentially.
I would like to invite Marshall to speak, because he's here, and I feel like, no offense to our other lived experience, we don't hear much from Marshall, and I really would like to hear from Marshall, please.
If I had to pick a category, it would be B2.
I'm sorry, which one?
B2 recovery.
B2, back more in recovery.
That's always been huge on my list. Outside of everything else is the treatment recovery aspect.
Thank you for that. Yes.
And just to point out, it does peer support services, counseling, and that stuff does fall into that one as well, so it might need.
Yeah.
Well, can I make a motion that we put the remaining $80,589 into the B2 bucket geared toward that work?
And may I suggest a caveat with a star for addressing equity?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Let's make, got a motion second, let's make sure we got that. Okay. Let's scratch and spread, you're, well, I have an extra, so. What's that?
To move the surplus $80,589 to B2 for recovery with the focus on it.
All right, any further conversation? Hearing, seeing none, yeah, signal by support of that motion by A, all right?
Aye.
Anybody oppose that motion? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Holy folks, you got it all. Any further conversation on this? I do just want to make one comment, Commissioner. I do very, very much appreciate you recognizing our staff. But I would here not considered as a county employee. I'm a pleasure of the Board of Health, so I represent the Board of Health. So my time is not counted here as far as what cost. So I just want to make sure that as a voting member, I'm representing the Board of Health for Laramie County. Just so.
Thanks for clarifying.
If we done with agenda item 3 or 6, where are we on? Are we done?
Six.
Do we? Yes, Jared.
I would just like to clarify, so with that allocation of funds within that bucket, is there anything for us as staff to take away from this as in order for you to facilitate the next contracting?
That's a great question. Yes.
I would just, that equity work or targeted equity work that we were just talking about, if there's some marginalized communities that are small numbers, but we can make a tremendous impact. And I don't know, because I don't think we have had a proposal on that, but if you have some suggestions, I don't know, I just think that since we all think that equity focus is the piece. I'm sure that it's there somewhere, we just have to, that's my focus.
I was gonna look at Jessica. We had groups we work with specifically in this room.
Okay, I can provide some recommendations offline after this.
Perfect. Great question. Thank you. Good point.
And would you all need grantees to come back to you by the January meeting, or would you be comfortable with that referring to a later meeting?
We talked about using the January meeting to get the grant contracts done and this, or the template updated and all of that. And then having the grantees come back with their formal proposal in February, using the new
That is
template.
correct. Thank
That's
you.
how I understood.
Yes, that's what we discussed.
Sir, sorry, I'm so sorry, you're very close. to that.
I know, don't fall in that hole, somebody's going to.
Well, that's great. All right. Okay, so we have a plan. Jared, that's great question. Thank you. Okay, I would adjourn a motion for a break before we move to item 7, because there's food over there and I'd like to go and have some.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, great.
All right, we can take a 10-minute break, folks. Let's do it. We'll come back at 3:25. Is that right?
I'm making sure I have it.
Well, you gotta be close.
Oh, I thought you were, I know, I know. That's right.
Doing great. I see how it's been. Chaos.
No, I'm private health.
Yeah, but.
It's good. The week before.
And the holiday.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
Well, your idea was take
That's what she's talking
Oh, good. Because that, they can give you.
Which.
Okay. Really?
That's good.
I love it.
Yeah, it's gonna make it worse.
I love the. You too?
And I'm excited.
They talk about the
I should just sign up. And I. Yeah, yeah.
That's what happened.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't have been cost effective. The trainer come out all the way from work to train teams. They really have leverage that training, so. Are you? It's gonna be an awesome. Yeah, yeah, that was good, well. I'll ask the answer. And you know.
You help.
This is for your attorneys. Some people can't.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, yeah, I wasn't like, knowing that we're. In terms of these, I like, these are for.
It's very complicated.
You asked. It's not- They never replied. Well, common sense seems like it's overall. But okay, you're right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I don't wanna make it all.
Yes, I did. Yes, and actually, that's.
Is there anything that I would
We just don't think.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was aware that this the time that you would be considered.
They're gonna approve the forms, send them out to everybody who wants. That was almost 2 months ago. 3 months ago.
I'm getting all of them. Let me check and follow on.
I know that much. All right, everybody. You have one for the board of health, like you're ready.
I can't do that.
It's not a Brian, it's not Brian. All right, everybody. We'll get started here. All right, everybody. We'll get started. All right. There we go. All right.
Guess we need a gavel if we're taking breaks.
All right, let's reconvene our ROAC meeting here December 5th. It is 3:28. We're going to move to agenda item 7. It's our grant administration 6-month reports. This is always a wonderful time to hear what's going on with the work, the great work, saving lives. Each, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 organizations giving us 6-month reports. Each organization has a total of 10 minutes. That includes questions. So we've asked them to come with about a 7-minute presentation, bring in some questions. And there is an action required because if you recall, we, after that 6-month update, we approve or don't approve their second half of their funding. So with that, we have the Larimer County Sheriff's Office here to present their 6-month report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council and guests. My name is Robert Cook. I think most of you guys know me. I'm a sergeant at the Sheriff's Office and supervise our co-responder team. I'd like to introduce one of our clinicians, Nicole Callahan, sorry. And Nicole, do you want to just talk about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Nicole, like you said. I'm a clinician with the co-response team. Been there with them for almost 2 years. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, licensed addiction counselor. Prior to this, I was a therapist in the jail on the JBBS team, so providing substance use therapy groups in there. Have other experience providing substance use prevention and intervention at the high school and middle school level in Denver, and then as well working with the public defender's office with juveniles. So love the intersection of criminal justice, substance use, mental health. It's kind of my jam. So yeah, that's kind of how I've ended up being here and part of this team.
She's an excellent resource for us that has a lot of experience. So she's going to help present today. And let me get you go to the next slide. Thank you. This was in the report that I submitted to you guys. I think maybe you've had a chance to review it. It's kind of hard to read on screen, but there are a few data points that I want to cover quickly. If you could go to the next slide, please. These are just data points that may be interesting and or may cause questions, but As you can see, in the direct personnel costs, we are at the 6-month mark, about 56% spent. In other direct costs, we're about 57% spent. Totally, overall for our budget, we're about 56.7 spent as of October, I think, or November 14th. One thing that we didn't anticipate is that administrative costs with the county went up significantly. And even though it says 151% spent, we're talking about $12,000 difference. So it's not a huge amount. But those were costs, indirect costs through Laramie County that we have to include in any of our personnel and equipment costs. And next slide, please. So our goal overall, obviously, as everyone's goal is to overall hopefully have a direct positive impact and save lives. Some of the objectives that we had for this year's funding was to utilize ROAC funding to ensure continuity of the Laramie County Sheriff's Office Co-Responder Unit expansion project. Additionally, to enhance our crisis response and intervention through recognized national training and getting our team to attend the 2024 ICRA International Co-Responder Alliance Co-Responder Conference, which we were able to do in June of 2024. Slide, please. Another big part of our objectives for this year were focused on data collection and evaluation. So we were able to put together a pretty robust reporting system that Corporal Fay was directly responsible for in working with Laramie County IT and members of our team, as well as Laramie County Sheriff's Office IT people. He created a really robust metrics program that gives us really good information on data collection. I think Commissioner Shannon McNally mentioned the project about the countywide project that's underway now with the grant from Department or Laramie County Behavioral Health Services. That will be an all-encompassing program to connect stakeholders and agencies in the Laramie County area, law enforcement, criminal justice, corrections, mental health providers, with direct communication and direct ability to understand where people are in the process, because we've all experienced the fact that a lot of the people that we deal with at co-response are people that Summit Stone deals with later, that people that UC Health deals with, people that a lot of these organizations that are represented here in the room today deal with, and an ability to have a more robust system of contacting those people and their providers directly is going to be a great asset. And it is something that has been done very well in Johnson County, Kansas. And I know Corporal Fay is also assigned to that committee as our team liaison. So as far as countywide distribution of services, we specifically work in unincorporated Laramie County, which means that everything outside the city limits of the incorporated cities. But our jurisdiction and our response area goes from Fort Collins to Loveland, Wilmington, Berthoud, Johnstown, Estes Park, Poudre Canyon, Livermore, and Red Feather Lakes. We also work directly with and coordinate with other agency units, both at Fort Collins, Police Services, Mental Health Response Team, and Loveland Police Department. We also work with our Estes co-responder and our Johnstown co-responder. And we often work together for community engagement events. We did several trainings that we did this first 6 months of this grant period. And we also did several public engagement programs trying to educate the public about what co-response is, with a copy of the co-responder events and other things that we do. As far as any issues or changes, we're not requesting any significant changes. As I said, our data objective for this grant period, I think, has been met on what we wanted to accomplish. However, the development of that new program that we're trying to do, working with Larimer County Criminal Justice Alternatives is going to be ongoing. I think the results of that are going to be tremendous. One of the things that we're doing that wasn't necessarily part of what our objectives were, but as Nicole mentioned, she has a lot of experience with addiction counseling and working with youth. We're working with her specifically to help us develop some additional training for our patrol staff that are outside the co-responder unit to make them more effective when they respond to calls where we're not available. And then as I talked about earlier, that creation of that all-encompassing system is going to be a tremendous asset countywide. Some additional noteworthy information that I wanted to include is the community engagement. I mentioned, I think the last time I presented, that we redeveloped our Larimer County Sheriff's Office website, specifically on the mental health page that we've developed that offers people to access services without actually having to call the sheriff's office or contact somebody from the co-responder unit. We've had since the first 6 months of our grant period about 1,700 visits to the website from 300 different cities and locations across the country. I think Commissioner Shattuck McNally shared this information with you earlier this year, but Larimer County gave the Larimer County Sheriff's Office a Youth Crisis Response Team, which is part of our co-responder unit that works specifically in Thompson School District, the Larimer County Innovation Award Grand Prize for 2024. And part of that, I think, is a video that maybe all of you got to see. We're excited about that video because it turned out so well. We're able to use that as kind of a public safety and public service announcement that can help educate the community about what services we can provide. We've done some community engagement events like the Coffee with the Co-Responder. We did one at Berkeley High School. We had about 140 kids that we had direct contact with our crisis response team and our co-responder team. And then we've done other Coffee with the Co-Responder events across Larimer County this past 6 months. Next slide, please. And a couple of data points that I think are important to share with you guys. Our co-responder unit, which has basically 5 deputies and 5 clinicians. We've got a couple vacancies right now that we're looking to fill, but we handle and deal with about 69% of all mental health cases versus the rest of our patrol section. So we have about 100 people in patrol that are assigned, and the unit that we have responds to and deals with about 9% of those. We also respond to about 62% of all suicide attempts versus the rest of patrol, and we respond to about 64% of all suicide threats. I think that's important because we're a small unit. We don't have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage, but we're up to 17 hours a day from 7 a.m. until midnight, Monday through Sunday. Welfare checks, if you looked at the stats, the welfare checks, we're only responding about 21% of those. But in case you had questions about that, welfare checks are not just mental health or substance use disorder issues. They could be a lot of different things. So that may be somewhat misleading if you look at that. And next slide, please. Nicole's going to talk about some of these other data points just because I think it's important from the mental health perspective and the addiction counseling perspective to kind of share some of the good news in case.
Yeah. Yeah. So just really quickly, the hold. So if we're putting someone on a hold, about 30% of those are emergency commitments. So specific to substance use, 70% of them are mental health related. For disposition, so going back to just our main goals, as a unit, only 1.8% of the people that we contact are ending up in arrests. So a very small percentage. 22% of all contacts result in hospitalization or ending up at Longview. So when we do have contact with them, as you can see for the next one, 50.5% of them are left on scene, either with family or safety plan. So we're really doing our best to utilize people's supports, their safe people, really problem solving in the moment to figure out what is the best place for this person. And it's not always the hospital. It's not always Longview. It's not jail, right? And sometimes it's making sure we're connecting them with their people. So we try to do that as much as we can. Again, for emergency commitments, 31% of those are related to drugs, and then 69% are related to alcohol. And then past or current substance use is about 42% of contacts are voluntarily reporting past or current substance use. So we can imagine that that number is probably a lot higher, because that's just people who are voluntarily reporting that in the moment. And then we're documenting what substance they're reporting.
Slide, please. And that's pretty much it. I just want to thank the council for all your support, and we couldn't have done the good work we're doing without that support. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. You can, yeah.
Remind me, sorry, Coach, how many, you said you're responding to even more than the 52% when your first plan, you're up to almost 69% from social health, but when you first came to us, it was below 30%, am I correct?
That's when we only had 2 units. So this expansion has allowed us to have contact with more people and get the help that they need faster and more efficiently. So.
And then with the youth, I know this is a really silly question, but what did the youth call your donuts when you went to the youth?
So in order to get some buy-in from the students, we called it power rings and coffee with Cobra splinters. So they were kind of curious. They didn't know what power rings were until we got there, but we supplied donuts and coffee to them. Staples, teenagers, caffeine and sugar. So yeah.
I could not for the life of me remember.
Yeah.
And then my last question, if I might, when you look at all those sites, that have visited and we had the first ever co-responder proclamation in the state, second for the county. Are any of those folks coming to see what you're doing or asking for data or having further contact, or do we know how co-response is increasing across the state? I know it's slow to go, but starting to pick up the country, but are we able to see some of that kind of?
Absolutely. There's a pretty strong community of co-response co-response units in Colorado. And Colorado actually is probably leading the nation. I think our next closest competitor is Washington, as far as really having buy-in to the need for co-response and being able to provide that community resource, which there's definitely a strong need for.
Thank you so much for your service, and thank you. It's nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Couple questions. You indicated that your administrative costs were up above what you had figured. Can you speak to what you might contribute that to?
I think inflation that has been high over the past several years, the increased cost of computer equipment, increased cost of providing those services with higher salaries that are being paid. A lot of those costs were county indirect costs. So they're not necessarily costs that the sheriff's office has, but any proposal or any situation where we add personnel, those indirect costs kind of attached to help pay for all the administrative support that goes on in the background. So that was a little underestimated by our county and finance people when we put the proposal together. And so that was kind of surprising to me too, that they were that much higher, but unfortunately, that's something we didn't have necessarily control over.
And do you feel that with this next round of money, were your figures more realistic this time around, or do you feel like you're gonna have a deficit again?
I think they're pretty realistic they're the best estimate that we can provide, that we get from our county finance team, working with our Lambert County Sheriff's Office finance team. So I think anything's possible, but I think we're trying to be as close as we can to that. And like I said before, overall, if you look at the fine print and the numbers, we're talking about $7,000 or $8,000 difference, which is substantial when it's a small amount too. But I don't want to underestimate that. But the thing is, we're prepared, even though we're over halfway spent. We're prepared to absorb those costs if we need to continue the program the way it is. So.
Okay.
In the spirit of time, one more question. We're way over time.
Okay, that's fine. I can talk to you later.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
We do need a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the 6-month report and approve funding for the next 6 months.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any further conversation? Hearing none, anybody opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Rise Above Colorado.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Kent McLennan. I'm the executive director for Rise Above Colorado. And I think let's got my slides in here. We're a statewide substance use prevention nonprofit working with youth 12 to 17. We'll share a couple of the things that we've been working on with this proposal, really twofold. First of all, working in partnership with CSU Prevention Research Center and building on the relationships that they've established with the 3 school districts in Larimer County. Thank you. And we go to the next slide. And then also the localization of the Attorney General's statewide Connect Effect campaign that we've been, that started in 2023. And I'll give you an update on where we're at with that. So we can go to the next slide. Just in looking at sort of our partnership development, we've had great success, again, thanks to Nate and some of the groundwork that his team has helped lay with in terms of working on prevention with the 3 school districts and starting to build our own relationships with them in terms of utilizing opioid use prevention educational resources, namely our Not Prescribed lesson, which is a single lesson, about an hour-long resource that is going to be delivered in a variety of schools across the county. Poudre School District has been the fastest and sort of first to adopt this and really to actually mandate it with their health educators on their team. They will be, we did a training last month with 35 health and wellness educators throughout the district and drug alcohol counselors. They will be working with us to co-implement this resource across the schools in Poudre School District, grades 5 through 12, over the course of this in spring. So we're really excited about their engagement at a district level and really adopting this. And we're having some great follow-up conversations with particular schools about doing more and going kind of above and beyond some of the initial planned work. Thompson and Estes Park School Districts, we have been working with. Thompson at this point is doing it more as an option, an opt-in training. It was the route that they preferred, which we'll be doing in January. And Estes Park has had a little bit from a capacity perspective of ability to partner with us on this as of yet, but we have had multiple conversations and anticipate moving forward with training in January, February. And we're continuing to communicate with a number of organizations across the county about the work in the schools and also the Connect Effect campaign so that we build buy-in and coordination of other messaging campaigns for youth so that we're not duplicating efforts. Next slide. I shared this at the AG's opioid summit that was hosted here in Larimer County 2 months ago. There's some great data coming out of Larimer County. We oversampled Larimer County youth within our larger statewide sample. And we saw some really cool additional data that came out of this. One being Larimer County youth are less likely to see drugs as helping to manage stress compared to the statewide data, less likely to say prescription drugs are safer than illegal drugs. Those are really positive numbers, and you'll see how we're going to build on some of these data points as well. 9 out of 10 see great risk in misusing prescription opioids. Significantly higher compared to the statewide average, and as well 92% would take sort of an active bystander role with friends to encourage a friend to stop using misusing prescription drugs. So some really exciting data that we'll continue to share, and this folds in, as we can go to the next slide, to some of the data that we've been working with and sharing with young people in the communities we build and localize this Connect Effect campaign. So we have a shell of the campaign that is the Attorney General adopted and was created by SC2 Communications. We worked with TAC 212, which is a youth group in Fort Collins, and their youth, many of whom have lived experience, to really work with them and get their input on how we structure this campaign and the messaging that goes out with it. I know there's a lot of information on here, but we did an initial focus group with them and kind of got a sense of where they saw the relevance of the campaign. Some of the data points that most resonated, and you'll see those two at the bottom, were ones that definitely made an impact on them. We did a photo shoot with them, so then you'll see in the actual creative materials that are going out, it does feature local Larimer County youth in them. Next slide. After taking that initial feedback, we came back with some initial draft mock ads for them to react to and get their feedback in a second session about a month later at the end of October. And so they gave some great feedback, and we're really, it was interesting. They were very passionate about which images they chose, their data points were aligned with. They wanted to make sure that if my image is going to be in here, I can really support the statement that's being made. And not everybody was as comfortable with that. So we made some modifications as a result of that. But then working with them so that they could see these data points. So the campaign is now set based on their feedback. We made those final edits. And Liv, if you just want to scroll through in the next couple of slides, I'll share this. And then as we go through questions, maybe I'll have Liv scroll through a couple of the additional slides that show some of the creative materials that you'll see for the Connect Effect. So just a reminder in terms of the audience, it's aimed at youth 10 to 18. In our tactic this will be going out TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. That's where youth live. The flight, we decided to avoid the expensive time period of the holidays right now. Based on the time that we were getting this finished and avoid the election, that we're starting that flight and doing it all in one block from late December. It'll start December 30th and finish the week of April 27th. And so that's the timing of when this campaign will go out. You'll see the media budget noted there. And we estimate about 2.3 million impressions will come from that campaign once it's launched. These are platforms that we're used to using with the statewide Connect Effect campaign that have been very successful as well. So that's where we're at, and I'll open it up for questions maybe as Liv just scrolls through so you can see again some of the different images and the different platforms where these will be featured.
Questions?
I just have a quick one, if I may. I guess what is the barrier that you're fighting from Estes Park, who I represent? You said that having difficulty getting that started. Is it staffing? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a staffing capacity. They were trying to hire for an additional position that would be one that could support their main sort of health and wellness person, which of course is one person in the district. And I'd be happy to follow up with you just on the contacts and where that stands. The interest is there. It's been just a staff capacity issue, and we're happy to go and facilitate in person to help get it done too.
Okay. So you're staying connected with them, and
Yes.
then we'll continue with that. Hopefully they'll get that.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. I will just note too, you'll saw the timing, our grant ends April 30th. And so we've built the media campaign timetable to finish in April. Somehow we're discovering with Liv that there may be a snafu in communications about potential ongoing funding for the Connect Effect campaign in particular. Obviously we've built this with the intent that we've done all of the hard work, right? And the actual creation of ads and those upfront costs, being able to run the campaign beyond this 4-month period, obviously will have an ongoing impact in reaching youth, building awareness, and obviously building some response to the actual campaign messaging. So I'll open that for communication for you all.
Councilmember Black, see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Did you say that Thompson School District was only offering this as an opt-in option for students?
At this point, not for students per se, but from an health educator's perspective, they're going to offer an optional training that health educators can attend that we will facilitate, similar to what we just did with Poudre School District. So they're not ready to mandate their health educators to use it.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
One comment I'd love to make is Recall when we agreed on this contract last year, it was the council's desire that when the Connect Effect group would meet with our local teams and get information from them. And they've done a lot of that. You've attended a couple of our school district meetings where we get the 3 school district superintendents as well as their mental health professional staff. Done a great job. And that we getting feedback from our youth and from our school district. So I feel that fully on that desire from the council. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I can make a motion to accept the 6-month report from Rise Above Colorado item and accept those or release the funding for the remaining 6 months.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Does anybody oppose that motion? That passes unanimously, and thank you for your work. This is fantastic.
Thank you all.
Can't wait to see these TikTok ads on my kids' phone.
That's right. It's gonna be out there. Okay, thank you.
All right, Colorado State University Prevention Research Center, Dr. Nathan Riggs.
My apologies, but my son has a Christmas concert.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a lot of fun. Have fun.
It'll be fun.
Yes.
See you guys in January.
Thank you for your input.
All right, I will try to fit this in within 5 to 7 minutes. We got a lot of exciting stuff going on in the school districts across the county. So reminder, we've got 3 goals for this project this year. The first goal is the Blues program implementation. I've talked about this a few times, so I won't go into too many details. For this year, we were able to expand this program. Thompson School District was appreciating the work so much that they decided to expand it to all of their high schools throughout the district. So we brought in the trainer to come in and train 10 new staff and 6 new peer folks, co-facilitators. In addition to that, Estes Park wanted to train another one of their staff, and so one of their staff came down to that training. We got some more folks trained. The Poudre School District folks wanted to have a little bit of a refresher, so we did that for them as well. And so these are the goals that the school districts have set in terms of reach. So Thompson School Districts, they believe they're going to be able to implement 8 cohorts and 40 students. In Estes Park, 3 cohorts with 10 students. And then in Poudre School District, they're really shooting for the stars, 30 cohorts and 150 students. So 200 at risk, if you will, students across these 3 school districts will hopefully be participating in the Blues program starting right now and into the spring. One of the things that happened last year is that the end of our grant date was March 31st, and then Thompson School District had 2 cohorts that went through the program after that. So we might, at some point when it's the right time, request an extension of this year 2 grant funding to be to cover the entire second semester of the school year, so that we can capture all of these students in the year 2 final report. All right, so that's the Blues program. We also have 7 more hours of prevention training for school district personnel. Since March 31st, 75 additional staff have been trained in best practices in prevention science. We also did a kind of a one-off for Estes Park. A colleague of mine in the psychology program and I went up to Estes Park and did a family night where we talked about high concentration cannabis use. It's a real issue these days. And so we talked to them for about an hour, and it was also an opportunity to kind of build up support for the Blues program and another program that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. It was so successful that they're asking us to come back up again and talk to the high school youth at Estes. All right, we can just go ahead. Next slide. This was the flyer for it. Next slide. And then one of the things that really worked out well with Thompson School District last year was we led a 90-minute training for the kind of boots on the ground facilitators on how to navigate difficult topics, including substance use and stigma, and understanding the root causes and proactive solutions to substance misuse. This is for the educators and the people who are going to be facilitating the Blues program. They would like us to now come back again in February and lead another training for their administrators so that their administrators are trained in how to do that. So that was the second goal for this second year. Now, in the third goal, we have district-specific goals. So in Estes Park, we supported them in identifying and selecting and purchasing an evidence-based school-based social emotional learning program for elementary schools called Second Step. It's among the most researched programs that are out there on these evidence-based registries. This program is being implemented to all 450 students in Estes Park elementary schools. And then we're starting to now move a little bit ahead of time on this other goal of implementing family-focused prevention programs that can be hosted within schools. This evidence-based guiding good choices program that's for, and there's going to be a real focus on the Latinx families in the region. And this is for families with 13 to 17-year-olds. So at the end of this year, we're going to have the Blues program, Second Step, and Guiding Good Choices, all as a result of these funds, of which we are very thankful for. Now moving on to Poudre School District. They really, again, wanted to focus on LGBTQIA programming and working through the GSAs, the Gay Straight Alliances, in the schools. One of the things we're doing is we're doing a needs assessment with those individuals in those alliance groups and identifying what those needs are so that we can then, in next year's round of funding, implement evidence-based programs through those GSAs. And then for this year, what we're doing is we're working with Rocky Mountain Equity to have them train the GSA sponsors that will then, they'll train them in how to talk with folks in those GSA groups on mental health and substance misuse. So they get some training there. And then finally, we've got Thompson School District. And again, they were really interested in focusing on students who have been basically caught using substances, either alcohol, cannabis, and nicotine. So this is all set up and we're ready to roll here right now. Just kind of, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, waiting for kids to get caught. And so if a kid gets caught using alcohol, then they will go through this program as kind of a restorative justice approach. Same thing with cannabis, same thing with nicotine, instead of suspending them from school. So this is now rolled out throughout all of Thompson School District high schools. And then in the alternatives, or one of the alternative schools in Thompson School District, all youth in the high school will participate in the alcohol version of the program. And again, that's starting current, like basically 2 weeks ago. So I think that's it. Yes, Commissioner.
Fantastic. And I really, my first comment, then I have a question. I really like how this has been tailor-made to the school district needs and their focus, and I think that is really phenomenal. And I just think that's amazing that you could get that done. But my question is the nicotine bucket there. I'm assuming, and I just want to clarify that it includes vaping, because I'm sure that's a majority of it. And I remember very clearly when they showed us our first little vape, and they had just started to collect 1 or 2, and 2 months later they were collecting shoe boxes full of them. And so I just know that was a big issue. So that includes on that, but also chewing tobacco too, because I know I heard that's back up and
yeah, all forms of tobacco. And so and just for a little bit of more level setting, this is a social norms, a norming based intervention. And it obviously or maybe not so obviously, the rates of vaping now far exceed traditional combustible tobacco products. And so the program has been adapted to be responsive to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been told vaping is predominantly cannabis too for folks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough to know exactly what's in those mechanisms. Yeah.
Yes, just.
No, just a question, since we just saw the other presentation about prescription drug use and some of the stats are on that. Is that part of this, or going to be part of that? Because I see the alcohol, cannabis, and nicotine, but it's prescription drugs.
We don't have, there is a prescription drug version of this, but the Thompson School District wanted to focus on these 3. We do use as local data as we can. So we work with the program developers to take Healthy Kids Colorado survey data, and then they can insert those data into the norming approach for the position. Yeah.
I think this is an off-topic question, but I know you have the research and you showed it to us before, but it would take me forever to find it and go back. But to show the research and the direct correlation of this upstream approach and some of the numbers you showed and how, I don't know if we have numbers to show how this will, the percentage or what the relationship is to incarceration or drug addiction. I know you had shown or talked about some of that. Is there a way you could send that to us just so we can kind of review that data again? And because I know kind of that when we're out telling the story of how about the prevention and how much this is with the developing brains, how important this is. Kind of like that video they showed of how long it takes to rewire the brain with some of the addictions. I think that would be just for my own things, and I don't know if anyone else is interested. I'd be very curious to have that in my back pocket because people are asking me questions again, so I just want to kind of have that. Thank you, if you wouldn't mind.
I will put a gratitude on it as soon as I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, and really that second step, those social emotional learning programs, like second step, they're all about building up those prefrontal cortical skills, those, self-regulation, communication, problem-solving skills, and building those up to kind of prevent that, downstream. And we know that those substances then hijack that whole prefrontal, limbic system circuit. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you very much. Coming from Estes Park, it sounds like I'm excited to see what that second step is going to do in elementary.
Yeah, me too. And that we're actually also working with them right now on identifying it could be second step has a middle school and a high school version as well. It's not as evidence-based. We may go with it anyway, but we're working with them on identifying a social emotional learning program that can be implemented in middle schools and high schools for year 3.
But they're not so much on board as for the blues program, from what I was reading with Estes Park.
They're having some challenges when it comes to identifying. It's kind of the same thing that Kent's running into like facilitators for the program. And so in our most recent conversation with them, was that yesterday, maybe a couple days ago, they have identified facilitators who want to lead blues program cohorts and then also the guiding good choices cohort. So hopefully that enthusiasm is sustained and we can get folks to be leaders of that facilitators.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 6-month report for CSU Prevention Research Center and to release the next 6-month budget. Second.
Double second. Any further conversation? Anybody oppose the motion? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Okay. Funders Foundation.
All right. So I'm Brian Bauer, I'm the Executive Director of the Abundance Foundation. One thing to quickly address real quick is everything that's come up earlier. Number one, we're not a faith-based organization. We do have connections to a lot of the churches in town. We have coaches that do a lot of things with the churches and do faith-based groups. But overall, everybody, all marginalized communities, we do have people from marginalized communities in our housing as well as in our program. We do have people that identify as Satanists that are in our program. So it's not, just to clarify that, that's not what our organization is. The other aspect is on the jail situation with Lamar County. We've had issues with getting coaches to get their background checks approved. On the men's side, there's a shortage of male recovery coaches in Northern Colorado right now. It's just hard to find the people to be able to do it. But for whatever reason, we had a couple of the background checks that didn't get approved. So because it was such a low portion of our, you'll see in here, a low portion of our overall budget, that was about 3% of the overall budget. We decided to reallocate those funds to hire or to put more people through the recovery coaching CCAR program. And also use funds to move recovery coaches into case manager positions if they were able to go through the process of getting their certified addiction technician certification. So we're trying to like create more structure, because once they have that, they're able to actually oversee more of the coaches that are coming through. So it was just a shift in the funds to that, and you'll see that in the report.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, next slide. I'm trying to go through this. So this is just some demographic data, gender, age range. Next slide. Ethnicities. One thing to really notice here, this is one thing that's interesting on the substance of choice. I know that's the Opioid Abatement Council, is the significance of meth. Right. And so the significance is meth, alcohol, and then fentanyl is down the list. So one of the things to pay attention to is like the significance of what that is and the aspect of people that are able to get treatment for that. It's hard because meth that doesn't require a medical detox. There isn't like a medication assisted treatment for meth specific. A lot of those come with if meth is cut with fentanyl, and so like if it's cut and they're able to get certain medications that help them in the withdrawal process. But overall, this is just our most recent data. We don't have a whole lot of statistics on it overall, but it was kind of surprising on how significant it is the issue in the overall county. Next slide. Involvement in the legal system. A lot of our clients are involved in the legal system. One thing that we're going to be able to follow up with a lot on this is people that are completing probation and parole while they're with our program. We just haven't had enough data to show the overall outcomes of them completing drug court probation and parole. We can see how many are involved in it right now. Education levels, next slide. All right, so into our objectives, the number of clients served in Larimer County. We had a total of 314 as of November 1st, 125 in the last 6 months. The sobriety rate goes trying to get 70 or 80%, which we've been able to do. Currently at 75% over the last 90 days. Pro-social and sober groups and activities. The women's dance inside the Larimer County, so we are involved in the jail. The women go do a dance class in there on Saturday mornings for 2 hours with the women. And they call it Dance to Be Free. That was a program that started in Boulder, and actually some of our women that are coaches had gone through that program while they were inside, and they've been able to duplicate it here in Larimer County. The men are actually going to start one as well, but for the IRT program on Thursdays. So that's going to be, that's right now, that's our only connection to inside Larimer County Jail. But that's been really productive in building relationships with the women that then transfer out, which you could see on that demographics on how large the women's population has been over the last 6 months on the women who have been served. Men's barbecue, room for hope, men's pro-social sober activities. We've been able to use space at the senior center, and that's been really good. Men's journaling and relationship group, that's been a growing one. I had 3 to 6 on there weekly. I think they're up to around 8 to 10, maybe 12. Women's life recovery, and then once a month, Colorado Artists in Recovery do an event on our Friday night meetings where they come to Genesis Project Church, where we do our dinner and a pro-social sober activity, and they do some type of art therapy activity, and that's been a huge thing. We just did a snow globe making thing this last Friday, so it's been really cool to partner with them on that. Next slide. So this is the Friday night meetings. We have about 60 to 70 people. We've done 26 dinners. It costs us about $2,000 a month. We have one of our former clients actually started her own catering company, and we contract with her to cater to run those dinners every week. The 60 to 70 isn't our clients. It's overall community. Harvest Farm brings a van of guys down. The Halfway House brings 2 vans over. So we have people coming from all over the community. It's 60 to 70 now. I think if everybody showed up, we'd have over 100 on a consistent basis. So next slide. Some of the other things we've done, so I got the pro-social stuff, medical and dental. We've helped everybody with that. So we start really with the hierarchy of needs. So the medical and dental is the first thing that we go through, making sure that everybody's going to do that. We have several women that are actually getting new sets of teeth in this next couple months, and that's finally going through. And they're able to do that through Medicare. Pretty cool program that they've got for that. Education, GED, degree certification programs, had 60 clients pursuing additional education. Employment, that's one of those requirements that everybody has. Legal advocacy, we've had 20 that we've had to actually advocate for people in court. We actually just had last week somebody get all 3 of their cases dropped by the recovery coach advocating for their progress for the last 90 days. So that's been pretty cool. I went through all that stuff already. Next slide. Equine therapy, we've been able to run a couple of those. We're trying to run more of those in the spring. That was huge, really instrumental, impactful thing for clients this last year. The equine therapy has been huge. Lisa is the one that runs it up in northern Fort Collins, and she's been great working with us. Health and wellness, a big part of our thing is getting clients in the gym, getting them active, pushing that stuff out. Title boxing, crunch fitness have been huge aspects for us, and getting clients set up with that and in that whole process so that they can continue on after they're not with our program anymore too. Next slide. This is what I was talking about, the outreach education. So we still want to be able to do the R1 learning system. It's just not going to be right now. So we've shifted that over to the CCAR recovery coach training. What's been cool with this is that we've been able to put 8 people through it. And we have one of those that's came on staff as one of our new recovery coaches, but 7 are just now got their recovery coach certification and can go work at any other of the organizations in the community. So it's not just, we're not just trying to do it in-house, we're trying to do it for anybody that doesn't have the funding to be able to take the class and start being a peer support. Next slide. Operational needs. What else has been cool that we realize is because we do build peer services through Medicaid, when we bring on new coaches, we're trying to bring on 2 because of the way that we've been able to bill. We actually were able to bring on 3 because after about 6 to 8 weeks, they're kind of in the flow of the system of everything, and they're able to compensate for what we're paying them. And so we're able to use grant funding to then hire on more people than we're planning on because we're not spending the full amount of grant funding on just salary alone. So that's been one cool thing, is being able to hire more people. Next slide. Some of the data. So this is we're one thing to remember is like we're still early in this. We started being able to collect data on these follow-up alumni surveys at the beginning of October, end of September, beginning of October. And so take that into consideration on this, but at least 90 days, 80%, clean and sober over 1 year. We just didn't have enough alumni say that. We just haven't had contact with that many people that have had a year yet. And the high quality of life, 80%, positive outlook, reporting, strong support system, 81, spirituality and religion, 94, full-time employment is 54, but we didn't include part-time or in school in that number. And people that have defined as successful, sober, full-time employed and self-sufficient, so they're out of the program and they're in their own housing, it's been 38% in that time frame. Program financials, we came out almost exactly what we were trying to do, 125, we came out at 129. So we were pretty close on the program financials. Next slide. Supportive housing. Our goal is 120 individuals, so that's what we worked with this year, or this 6 months. We came in under budget on this, and that was because we were planning to have the other women's house opened up by this point, but that has not happened yet. It's still in the process. And so we came out under it, but we've been able to scholarship still 51 individuals and use, hit the 700,000. Next slide. So you see the utility cost, the sober living supplies, toiletries, hygiene, basic stuff. So sobriety rate, 70 to 80%. On that survey, we had clients in the follow-up survey, 100% reported sobriety, but we also couldn't be in contact with the people that relapsed. So you got to factor in, there is like, it looks great, but we do have to factor in the other like 15 to 20% that we know for sure is just back out in the land, hasn't come back around yet. But they can when they're ready for it. So, next slide. Goal was 51%. We had 62% female clients. The goal was 51. One of the cool things that we've had is the meeting attendance. 1,241 meetings attended in 90 days, which is super cool. 51 clients on scholarships. So this is just data from people that were in our housing and on scholarships. So that doesn't include the program overall and everybody that was outside of that. Next slide. Scholarship housing growth track. This was a cool thing that I was able to pull out. This is just over the entire time that we've had sober livings open. It's just the consistent growth. Next slide. Program financials on this, so you can see the housing financials. The one biggest piece of this was having the other house open. This house has been trying to get this house. There's an eviction process going on right now with the tenants that are technically squatting. They're taking advantage of a situation where they haven't paid the rent. And it's like, and they're not in a bad situation. They're not active users or anything. They're average working class people that just have not paid rent and taken advantage of the mental health of the landlord of that property right now. So it's been a mess, but it's like we're one step closer as it is. So one thing I'd ask is just leniency on that. It's like you'll actually see the house. That's the house that we're trying to get. So it's right off at 34 and Denver Avenue in Loveland. So it's a prime location, great house, great neighborhood. Everything else is ready to go. We just need to have the people out of it. We can fill it right away. We have women that are waiting. So in the meantime, we have been putting other women into the Oxford houses that are in the Loveland and Fort Collins area, as well as like North Fort Collins in the Vine House to be able to accommodate for it. And that's really where all the scholarship planning has gone so far is either both of our houses are full, but also the other houses and the community we've been able to support. And so, if you want any testimony, we had some really cool testimonies. So I don't know if you follow any of our stuff on social media, but we've had 3 or 4 client testimonial videos recently that are super impactful. We actually had one client that went viral and this is like 250,000 views on TikTok. So it's a pretty cool thing on how much impact it's actually like social media can make in this.
All right, thank you. Questions?
So I just want to go back and clarify, back to the numbers, because it was kind of the thing that I pushed for us to make sure that, as you said about the women's house, and I understand it's kind of been a challenge, but you made sure that money that was supposed to go to the women's house, but I want to just make sure it is going for women to be housed and other things. It sounds like you actually, you've done more than what was.
That's what bringing, because that's one thing that the women's dance and those type of programs have done is increased our women's side of the program. And so as they're getting out of jail, they have the relationships and can get them into housing right away, even if it's not our house.
And so I'm just curious of those women clients, they're going in there living individually, but some of them probably have families or children. Is that correct?
Some do. If they do, we've been able to get them into the Vine House.
Okay.
That's for the women and children.
So they can stay.
Yeah, we're actually talking to, I don't want to really put that out there too much, but talking to Yeji about a possible partnership deal on that big house as well. So
thank you.
We can do more with that.
Other questions, comments?
Make a motion to accept this 6-month report and release the next 6 months of funding. Did we need to make a caveat? He asked to reallocate. Or extend
25%.
It was just for that. Yeah, it was just the 3. It was for that. Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to accept the 6-month report and release the next 6 months of funds.
Got a motion second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimous. Great work. Wonderful data.
Yes.
Okay, Darrell collected.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, if I might ask, if I see not all of these, I'm not sure, is all the data that we've seen up here been in our packet, or is there some of these reports that were not?
Everything should be in there except the CC presentation. Everything else is.
Okay, so that's what I was looking for, so is there a way we can
I
get
can
this?
get that.
That would be great, thank you.
Right. You're up.
Thanks for having us back. I'm Silent Bayer, the
And I'm Lucrecia Bayushi for data programs.
the first few slides are review for you all. You all have met us before, so we'll just skip past those in the interest of time. Just review of our mission statement and some of our harm reduction approach. And then getting into what we accomplished in the last 6 months with this funding. Our first objective was to develop and implement a twice monthly arts and outdoors pro-social event series, 18 events total over the year, and we're on track to meeting that goal with 5 arts-based events and 4 outdoors events, respectively, reaching 55 and 40 people. And just some photos on the next slide to just show you some of the heart of what's been going on.
So our monthly event series include flow arts, yoga, paddleboarding, outdoor scavenger hunts, and costume making. This was one of my favorite events. This was one of our more popular events, and a lot of these people have never been to Horseshoe or have had the ability to access paddleboards or get on the lake, and so we hear pictures of participant with their dog, and there's a lot of fun at this event. So.
The next objective was to do 4 quarterly larger events focused on that social connectedness. And we were able to do 2 events so far, reaching 127 people. And the next slide has some more of what those events looked like.
So those quarterly events, the first one was the Empower Me Art Gallery, and there was art featured from inmates. Their artwork was displayed, and it was an art gallery. It was very well attended. And then our second event was our annual tour to Mat 5K. We had over 50 participants, and we had men from the FERT program or the START program attend that event as well. And yeah, great turnout at both events. Here's more pictures of us. We recently did pumpkin painting where we went to the Loveland Resource Center. We just brought some tables, went directly to them at the park, provided food, painted pumpkins, and again, really just they're reducing as many barriers. That was also, again, people haven't painted pumpkins in a really long time, and so it was a really beautiful event as well. These are just some of our flyers with our events that we have created and hosted in the community. Take a look at.
Then the last objective across all of these events was to reduce as many barriers as possible to folks accessing them. And we were able to assist 29 attendees with transportation or supporting them in coordinating that transport, and 40 with the necessary gear, specifically like rental of paddle boards or like shoes for the 5K and things that they might need for those outdoor activities. A lot of our events, we also prioritized like meeting people where they were at, particularly for the unhoused community. So a lot of our events were like hosted near the Murphy Center and near the Loveland Resource Center to reduce those transportation barriers as well, where we could, particularly for the arts-based things where we didn't necessarily need to like take people out to a lake, for instance.
And if they did have to be transported, supporting provided transportation and, making sure that their stuff is secured, making sure it's in a locked car was really important to them as well. So that was also a really important part of the.
Yeah, so just going over all of those things combined, the overall numbers from our last 6 months for this project in particular, 222 people reached, over 11 events total. 4 of those 11 were in Loveland, and we spent a lot of the 6 months starting to build up our audience in Loveland and build up collaborations in Loveland with Colorado Artists in Recovery, as well as the Loveland Resource Center. So we're planning in January and February to do more events in Loveland just to even out that ratio from the Fort Collins to Loveland to make sure we're not just reaching people in Fort Collins. And then we also at these events passed out naloxone and fentanyl testing strips. So just overall getting those harm reduction supplies out as well.
So really, I mean, we've gone over the numbers and really, I just want to speak, briefly about really the impact that these funds and these events and these opportunities have had on the community, specifically the community that's houseless. I want to share a quick story. We took participants out to Horsetooth, and one participant came up to me and said, "Is it okay if I don't paddleboard? I just want to sit on the rocks and enjoy the water." And so the entire time he just sat on the rocks and enjoyed the water and read his Bible, and just giving them the opportunity to experience things that they don't normally get to experience and removing the barriers. We provided towels and shirts and swimsuit or swimming shorts for them. And they were really surprised. They're like, "This is for us, like we can keep this." And I said, "Yes, this is for you, like keep it." And even the 5K and also part of the 5K, we involved the community in making all of the supplies that we needed for the 5K, from the banners, really made it a community event where they could come and participate in the development of that as well. And so, one person said, like, "Thank you so much for doing this. This is not something that we typically have access to, and thank you for just caring." And this, honestly, this community is really near and dear to my heart. We do work in the Larimer County Jail as well. So, you see some of the same people kind of flowing in and out of these spaces. And so the impact that this has had on the community that typically doesn't have access to resources or, doesn't really qualify for the recovery services, it has really been really impactful. So I just want to say thank you, because it's been really beautiful to witness.
Yeah, and as this was like a newer area of our programming, since a lot of our programming focuses on groups, as you all know, we really focus this for 6 months on establishing trust with the community. For participants who come to our groups, like we really reduce as many barriers as possible when they come. We don't require they fill out intake paperwork. We don't even collect their legal names if they're over the age of 18. So everything they share with us is voluntary. And for our group participants, that means like once they've come for 3 or 4 months, then it's like, oh, I want to share about all these things and how this group, what this group has meant to me. But for this program, we're still establishing that trust to really get some of that participant feedback beyond the anecdotes that Lucrecia was sharing. But we do know from our so we don't have comprehensive like demographic data on these events yet, since we're still establishing that trust. But from our programming so far in 2024 at our groups, we're looking at about 91% of our participants have some kind of marginalized identity that we're reaching across all of our group spaces. So yeah, that's all we have to share. We'll open up for questions.
Thank you, appreciate this very much. And I'm assuming, so 2 questions real quick. Are you getting passes from Horsetooth and or you do as you go as a group? And I'm wondering if you asked for maybe a discounted, because it does cost to come in. I don't know if you got an annual pass, you can take the bus, or have you asked for maybe some reductions for that, since it is kind of a program or have you?
We actually hired a company, I'm not really sure the company, it was a friend, and so they rented a van, and the van came to the Murphy Center and picked up the participants and attached it to the trailer. We went up to a spot in Portsmouth. I'm not really sure of the specific area, but there was no fee associated. We just paid the person for the supplies and time.
And then to the slide before my next question, you don't mind, the respondents, this really struck me. These groups rated a higher sense of belonging, which that's very important to me. I think that's really important. I'm just curious, what kind of, how do they rate that? Is that just a 1 to 5, or did you ask the question, or how do you measure that?
Yeah, most of the questions we ask are those Likert scales. So like from 1 to 5, like I see, we phrase it a couple different ways, just to kind of test the survey. But it'll say like, I can see myself belonging at this event, or I feel like an outsider at this event, like 1 to 5. So phrasing it a few different ways just to try to get the nuance of that.
Great, thank you very much.
And I could speak a little more like the Latinx piece. I mean, I was born and raised here in Fort Collins, and so like my grandmother and my mother have long history and roots in Andersonville, Spanish colony. You know, and so I think having those community ties and really knowing, I mean, I went through the Poudre School District, Thompson School District, Lesher and Fort Collins High School. And so I really know this community and people know me. And so I'm also bilingual in Spanish, and so I speak Spanish as well. And so really having the representation is a really important piece to finding that sense of belonging in these spaces as well. And so, you know, our team is really diverse with lots of marginalized identities. And so we have a pretty good representation of different identities that we also serve, which is also, I think, really helpful to these as well. So
Thank you so much. It's amazing.
yeah, thank you.
Just a really quick question on the 222 that you reached, or those unduplicated? 222 individuals.
That part's pretty hard for us to track, actually, because of the transience of the community. We are starting to see regulars. So that's a duplicated number, and I could not get you the unduplicated one just because the transience of the population makes it hard to tell, like, I think we've seen you before, but like, or, you know, so that's a duplicated number, yeah.
I just want to make a comment. You know, it always, I get real excited when these things, the work links up. It was back in May of 2023, the Surgeon General declared national crisis with loneliness in our country. And from that work, under Jared and my staff's work, the community health assessment and the community health improvement plan identified a priority of creating more social connections and reducing loneliness. And then when you see this work come together, it all ties together, and we're seeing the sense of higher sense of belonging. It all comes together. That's where I get really excited, because the work, it's so upstream, it's so preventative on all along of health outcomes. And the Surgeon General says it's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day when you're lonely. So you're not only getting folks set up for success, being substance free, but preventing poor health outcomes in the long run. So thank you for your work, and it lines up with our priorities here in the county. So wanted to highlight that.
I'll make a motion to approve the RO collective.
Second.
Release this next 6 months.
We got a motion second, further conversation. Hearing none. Anybody oppose that motion? Passes unanimously. Great work. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great fiction. It's my favorite place. All right. Fort Collins Rescue Mission.
Hi, my name's Kyle McPherson. I think, am I the last presentation?
Yeah.
But not the least.
Okay, but that means that if I go quickly, you get to go home. That's good motivation to be concise and clear. So my name's Kyle McPherson. I'm the program director at Harvest Farm. I'm here representing both Harvest Farm and Fort Collins Rescue Mission for the grant funding that we've received in our 6 months. The next slide, please. So our grant funding request was for 2 community life coordinators at Fort Collins Rescue Mission, which would allow us to continue 24/7 operations. And then the second request was for Harvest Farm. That was for 1 case manager and then 1 case manager / intake specialist. That second role holding 2 different positions, both caseload, managing intakes for our program. Next slide, please. Our objectives were relatively straightforward and easy to measure. We wanted to really put an emphasis on increasing intakes that we received from Fort Collins Rescue Mission. We wanted prioritizing reaching in and serving those that are most vulnerable in our community. For reference, Harvest Farm is a 72-bed program on 110 acres in Wellington, providing services for 9 months to 1 year. We are also one of the only programs that is completely free to individuals seeking care and seeking services in our community. So we wanted to do that, which was very important to us. We wanted to maintain 24/7 shelter access, particularly during the winter months. That's what initially prompted us for coming and making this request for services. And we wanted to increase connection at the shelter. We want to increase group opportunity and group engagement for men experiencing homelessness, trying to help them build a sense of community while they're in shelter. Because we know that if they can get to a point where they begin feeling accepted and involved, they're much more likely to have the ability to step out of homelessness and take that next step towards recovery and hopefully housing. Next slide, please. So to date, we have utilized roughly 45%. If anyone's math minded, you can double check. Maybe roughly 45% of our grant and are very much on track for that. Our CLCs, if you look in the report, have utilized slightly more, and that's due to necessary overtime for them, particularly during the winter months. Many of you are aware that we operate 2 sites during the winter, and staffing is hard for everybody, but it's particularly hard for seasonal staff working in the shelter. And so we have been working through that, but we're on track. Next slide, please. So you can see that here. Again, it's in your packet as well. Slide. All right. So for the Fort Collins Rescue Mission, they have for the calendar year served 927 unique individuals, 33% self-identified with substance use disorder. I think it's always important to note, and I think we all know this, someone is far more likely to omit having a substance abuse problem than they are to come forth and say that they do have it. Although I think 33% is still a staggering number to see in our shelters, because our shelter is low barrier, meaning that someone with a substance abuse problem can't stay there. Someone who's intoxicated can stay there, so long as they're not a negative impact on the community and the rest of the guests that we have there, creating a safety problem. For Harvest Farm, we really streamlined the intake process, trying to work towards getting men from shelter into the program. So we started having staff go there either weekly or bi-weekly to meet with guests, engage with them, and do assessments on site. We also started a program where shelter guests can sign up to come to Harvest Farm and take a tour. Because it's one thing to describe and say, hey, there's this farm north of you, and you can go there and they'll help you, and they're pretty nice, I promise. For someone who has a low level of trust for any authority figure, that's kind of a stretch. So you know what? Let's bring them up there. They can hang out with the baby goats, they can hang out with the pigs, they can take a tour, they can have a meal, they can spend some time with us, and then they can make their decision. And you know what? If at the end of it they say, not today, not right now, not for me, that's okay. If one individual came up, took a tour, said, not for me, not today, not right now. 6 months later, though, he said, you know what, I think this might be a good fit. I think this is something that I want to step into. Next slide, please. So with that, on the number of men coming in to us from shelter, today we're seeing that's roughly 45 to 50% of everyone that we're working with at Harvest Farm, which is huge and a huge increase. For our last calendar year, we had a total of 21 men come straight from shelter. This year, for our 6-month report that we filed, we're already at 29, with a goal of hitting 40 at the end of the year. And I think we're on track to far exceed that goal. In terms of small group participation and engagement, that's grown by 93% in shelter. In part, I think it's twofold. One, there's a lot of power in naming a goal. There's a lot of power in saying this is an objective, this is something we want to do, and here's why. And then the staff are fundamentally amazing in that way. And for those of you who have toured that shelter, that group meeting space is smaller than, if you stop from right there over here, it's smaller than that. It's also where our case management office is. It's unfortunately where the restroom is also located. And so that staff clearing their desks, stepping away, so that way individuals can come in and participate in the group and have a sense of community. Next slide, please. At this point, I can say confidently, we're not expecting any challenges for this grant. We're on track with the spending. It's incredibly supportive. It's had an immense impact. Say at Harvest Farm, we're having a remarkable year. For reference, last calendar year, 2023, we graduated a total of 45 men. For this year already, and we still have several graduates lined up, we've graduated 74 men from the program. We've also had an additional 16 that have obtained housing. So we're looking at over 90 men who have obtained housing through coming more stable housing after entering in and receiving our services. We have given away 53 laptops, brand new Chromebooks that were donated to us. And that's for any individual who comes to us, stays with us, gets a job and saves up over $1,000. We don't keep that money. That's not savings that we hold. They just show, here's my bank statement, Kyle, I've saved $1,000. We say, that's great. Here's a laptop. We're proud of you. We want you to be able to use this as you go on and for additional support for you. We've also had another thing that we always track is departures, because you want to look at how many individuals are coming in, how many are graduating, how many are leaving. We have had 70 departures this year. Now, if you look at it, though, or think through it, for us last year, for our calendar year, we had a total of 123. 123 men who departed of all those who came in. So that means today, an individual stepping onto our property is more likely to graduate and more likely to obtain housing simply by stepping foot onto our property. And in departures, we include everyone. We include someone who steps onto our property, enrolls, stays for 4 hours, and then leaves immediately thereafter. We say that, you know what, they came, they enrolled, and unfortunately they didn't stay. We have also given away over 35 vehicles to men who have graduated from our program. And that's from men and women and agencies who donate cars that we work on, we fix up. We say, you know what, we want you to leave this program, we want you to have every opportunity to be successful. We know that transportation is difficult. In Wellington, we know that public transportation is non-existent, which is why we have a shuttle service, why we transport men to and from work 6 days a week. So we give them a car because we want to remove barriers. We don't want to create barriers for them when they've done so well. And for reference, metrics for graduation, which I referred to, is finding housing, stability and sobriety, develop community, and then income sufficient to support yourself. So when I say 74 men have graduated, I mean 74 men have found more stable housing. 74 men have income sufficient to support themselves, have a community, and are sober, and have the opportunity to reunite with their parents, with their siblings, with their kids, with their families. Yeah, so that's my presentation. I think I'm on track for everybody. Any questions? Thank you.
Questions? Yes, Beth.
So, may have missed it, but
Sure.
my memory serves me right. Part of the grant was gonna cover an expansion, so some construction expansion at Harvest Farm.
Yes.
How was that?
Your memory is not up. We're presenting on that next month. I'm happy to speak to it.
No,
So
that's good. I just want to make sure
Okay.
it's still on the radar.
yes, it is very much on the radar and still in process.
Okay, great.
Yes, Ken.
So back to the objectives, when you talk about increasing the staff and having the community life coordinators and the intake. This increased the staff capacity by how much?
So it didn't increase the staff capacity, it underwritten and allowed us to continue to maintain staff.
Oh, okay,
So our 2 CLCs in particular, there was funding associated to that. That funding dropped out. And so this funding allowed us to continue to do that.
okay, and so those caseloads of those folks of the departures and things. You say 927 unique, was it 927?
Unique individuals served at the rescue mission.
Yeah, so what's that caseload like? Or is it just because you, or only who you can manage at the farm, but I'm just curious.
Sure. And so the CLCs are at Fort Collins Rescue Mission, and Fort Collins Rescue Mission does have their own case manager. Now, due to the constraints of the size, and I know you've been there and seen it, we have one case manager that serves those who are interested and willing to engage in case management services at Fort Collins Rescue Mission. So in contrast to Harvest Farm, you could say that person has the highest caseload of anyone in our agency and organization. But case management also isn't fully mandated for every individual because there are reserve beds for men who are willing to engage and want to engage. And then there are overflow beds. And on top of that, we have a secondary shelter during the winter that's an emergency shelter where there's no requirements. It's just our best effort to get individuals out of the cold and inside.
That's helpful, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Your comments, questions?
I make a motion.
Yes, please.
I make a motion to accept the 6-month report of Fort Collins Rescue Mission and Harvest Farm and release the remaining 6 months funds. Thank you.
Any further conversation? Anybody oppose the motion? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Astounding numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Accomplished everything that was on this massive agenda. And I just want to make a comment to everyone in the room still here that's doing the great work. I would think it'd be just appropriate for the council, we go so fast, that we just give a round of applause to everyone, all our grants doing this fantastic work, saving lives. It's truly remarkable to live in this community and raise my family in this community, all this passion and compassion and empathy, so I appreciate it. Thank you. I do want to thank the council here, every member of the council. A little token of your thank patience for your year, all your work, several hours behind the scenes, staff, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Big, yeah, let's get a step around. And then, council, thank you very much. This is, it's exciting. So from there, any further conversation or move to adjourn, and we'll reconvene after the meeting.
I just wish everyone a wonderful holiday season and getting so you to everyone, to you and yours. I hope it's peaceful and restful and nurturing and happy holidays and thank you to everyone and just glad to be part of this great work. I'm adjourned.
Does anybody oppose that? No opposition. Meeting's adjourned, even early, 9 minutes early.
Wow.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Oh, happy New Year. I don't know what is done.
Yes, yeah.